Hello, and welcome to Your Choice 2020 General Election Cover, coming to you live from HOMTV Studios right here in Meridian Township. I'm Katie Schroeder, and this evening is the most pinnacle time for not only the candidates, but also the community. Everyone here at HOMTV comes together, socially distanced of course, to keep you up to date on what's happening in Meridian Township as this
It's been an incredibly positive experience. I've been serving on the Law and Courts and Finance Committees, and both of those have afforded me the chance to see how incredibly hardworking our sheriff's department is, and the folks in our court system, and also be involved with looking through how we're taking care of taxpayers' money on county collected revenue. Also, I've made myself widely available for folks who have contacted me with any constituent-related issues, and it's been a pleasure to help them with their challenges and issues and get solutions.
2 years ago, in the 2018 election, it was a normal election. We didn't have as much absentee voting, and this year it's an election in a pandemic. So, could you talk a little bit about what it's been like campaigning in the midst of a pandemic?
Well, you definitely bring up a good point. In a irregular campaign cycle starting in spring, I would have been out on the doors aggressively talking with voters and neighbors, and while we were in that shutdown mode early on, that obviously didn't occur, so a lot of it was just kind of focused on doing things online and kind of focusing more on just lit drops to get information out to voters, but not actually knock on the doors to potentially make them feel uncomfortable, having conversations if they may not be interested in doing so. So that's both at my level and Congresswoman Slotkin and others. That's really kind of been the shifted strategy, is focusing more on the lit drop and not so much actually knocking on a door and talking. Although I will say, 2 years ago, it was great to have those conversations. It really helps get a picture of what's important to voters and hear from them directly. And I do hope that next round we'll be able to get back to that kind of communication.
Yeah, I hope so too. It's really been an interesting election year. Could you talk about what, if reelected, what you hope to do or achieve in the next 2 years?
Well, serving on the county commission, I'm also have been selected by my colleagues on the commission to serve on the board of directors for the Lansing Area Economic Partnership. And one thing I'm working with them on, which I think is going to be very important as we, whenever this is, get beyond the COVID crisis, is working to coordinate all the incentives from the different energy companies to kind of come up with a single place where we can showcase this, share it with businesses, share it with homeowners and everything else, so we can really start to set our community and set up businesses as well as local governments to have electronic vehicle charging stations and have that infrastructure. Because once we move out of our pandemic mode, this will really set us up as General Motors, as you know, is rapidly transitioning toward the production of electric vehicles. This will set our whole region and community up to really be looked at as a forward looking community to to be a very interesting location for people to look to expand business and site their businesses here.
So could you talk a little bit about what you've heard from residents, if there's any overall message you've heard in the past 2 years, but also during, like, even campaigning this time around as well?
Well, we've made a lot of progress. I did serve as treasurer for our Fix Meridian Roads local ballot initiative. And one thing that's always been an issue is the state of our infrastructure. With the passage of that millage, that's set us up for a 10-year repair cycle to go through a lot of the local roads. We still have a number of countywide roads such as Hewlett, Okemos, and others that still need to be repaired. Now, we've seen Jolly and part of Hewlett already repaired. I continue to stay focused on making sure those county level roads can get the resources they need back here in our community to kind of combine with what we're doing on the local roads, county roads, and then MDOT roads as well, trying to make sure that our whole community is set up and repaired correctly.
You mentioned the roads. Just in your time as commissioner, have you seen any, I know you said you previously served for the Meridian roads, but have you seen any improvements on our roads overall in your new role as commissioner?
Yes, absolutely. This past year, we saw the repaving of Jolly Road from Hagedorn back to Midwest Power Equipment, basically, and they instituted the road diet there. We've done a chip seal on Dobie Road to extend the quality of the pavement there, and Hewlett Road received some repairs in the general area off Jolly down past the high school to the roundabout. And so as we move forward, I'll be continuing to work with our road department to make sure that those projects are moving forward. And another project that I'm working on is to work with Tri-County Regional Planning to make sure that we can align road improvements by the Village of Okemos project and have the construction happening there aligning properly with road improvements through that area.
Okay. Alrighty, Mark Polstoffer, good luck tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Katie?
Earlier today, HOMTV reporter Janelle James went to the polls to ask voters right here in Meridian Township what influenced them to vote in this year's election. Take a listen.
I'm Janelle James here at Edgewood Elementary School, where Precinct 9 voters can cast their votes. We talked to a number of people after they have voted. Here's what they had to say.
I really feel it's that civic responsibility. I feel like being in person, it's just very important to me to be here on election day to exercise that right.
Usually, like for me, I kind of want to see how everything's going to play out. So I also like coming in and voting because it just makes it feel more authentic to me.
I wanted to make sure it was counted. There was other ways of voting, and this was the more usual way, and I thought this would be the more certain route.
Actually, I was told that if your signatures don't exactly match up on your ballot versus your license, that it could possibly not count, so that's why I wanted to come in and do it in person. That is just part of what some voters had to say after leaving the polls. Stay tuned to Your Choice 2020 general election coverage for the latest election results. Janelle James, Precinct 9.
Early voting began in Michigan on September 24th for the general election. The Meridian Township Municipal Building was extremely busy up until November 2nd with early voters. At times, people were even lined up, socially distanced, around the building with residents wanting to submit their ballot and beat the Election Day rush. This year, Ingham County decided to implement a new opt-in counting board for absentee ballots. The county board consists of poll workers who will process and tally absentee ballots on Election Day, and Meridian Township chose to be a part of the board. The main task will be opening envelopes, straightening ballots, and removing tabs, and running through them the tabulator as well, duplicating ballots that have errors. Board members will be stationed in separate rooms for the entire process since they will be looking at live ballots. Here's what Meridian Township Clerk Brett Dreyfus had to say about the goal of this board.
The goal would be to try to get the ballots processed as quickly as possible. And so we have absentee counting boards' goal is to try to be able to find more and more efficient means of counting the ballots. The county is going to be offering an option to allow different municipalities to join in together and do a completely countywide absentee counting board that can have a better scale of efficiencies. And maybe through the use of concentrated equipment and people all in one location, it can get done a little bit faster. There have been issues in the past with programming issues and transmission issues, so sometimes these technology things happen. But this goal of the county board is to make everybody have the election results faster and easier for everyone involved.
On Wednesday, October 28th, Governor Gretchen Whitmer held a virtual press conference to address voting in Michigan. The goal of the press conference was to provide information to Michigan residents about the November 3rd election. Governor Whitmer had this to say about the increased amount of absentee voters. Sorry, we do not actually have that clip tonight, but during the press conference, Governor Whitmer was also joined by Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. She talked about the record-breaking amount of voters participating in this election. Even though we are in the midst of a pandemic, at the time of the press conference, more than 3.5 million Michigan residents had requested absentee ballots, with 2.4 million voters having already submitted their ballot. She also went on to ensure the public that there are steps in place to make sure this election is secure. We'll come back to that in the morning. We have the Anthony Clerk. We have the Ingham County Clerk, Barb Byro.
Thank you so much. Yeah, definitely. Now, James, in the field, HOMTV.
Just repeat one.
Do you expect to have any results by this evening?
So we already have results that are starting to come through at the county.
Thank you. I'm Janelle James, out in the field reporting, HOMTV.
We're so sorry about those technical difficulties right there, but let's get back to the show. It's no question that this has been a controversial election, with a lot of people having very strong opinions about who they believe should be the next president. This has led to questions about Election Day and safety and what is to follow once results have been announced. Meridian Township Police Lieutenant Rick Grillo spoke with us about how the police department prepared for the Election Day in the township.
Are we worried? No. Are we prepared? Yes. We always trust that the people of Meridian Township will act appropriately and accordingly. So we don't anticipate any issues arising. However, we continually plan, we continually train, not just with our agency, but with outside agencies, so that we know how to respond if there is any type of unrest. And we do have viable plans in place to deal with those issues.
Lieutenant Grillo also commented on whether or not he was worried about any issues arising once the results have been announced.
Concern here in Meridian Township. So some of the measures that we are taking for Election Day, we're going to have extra officers on patrol that day. So you may see more cars out than you normally would. However, we're not going to have anybody assigned to any of the polling stations. We'll just be available if there is anything that anybody needs. And I guess to kind of go along with that, we have given our officers some extra training on the laws that pertain to elections, because those aren't something that we use every day. So we want to make sure that they were aware of what the laws are before they have to respond to something and make decisions. Safety is always a concern here.
All right, now we're going to go back out to the lobby to Ben, where he's waiting with another guest.
Thanks, Katie. Joining me right now is the new Meridian Township Neighborhoods and Economic Development Director, Amber Clark. Amber, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
So first of all, since you're new, could you give residents a little bit of a background about yourself?
Sure. My family and I have lived in Hazlet since 2015. We've been residents. We have a son who attends Raleigh Elementary. We're living in the Hazlet community and been settled in very nicely. I'm an MSU grad with a background in public relations and communications, and 2 years before this position I have been serving as the assistant for the city manager for the city of Jackson.
So why did you want to come from Jackson back here to Meridian Township?
Well, I've actually lived here the whole time while I was working in Jackson, so it was a big commute. So I loved the opportunity to serve the community I live in.
I see. So could you give us some updates, give the residents some updates on some of the ongoing projects and even some upcoming projects going on around the township?
Sure. So still ongoing, the new block that's put in at the intersection of Okemos Road and Grand River, it's got the new Chipotle, Aspen Dental, the Verizon haven't gotten their occupancy in there yet, but the Chipotle is in open. And they're still working on development at Anna's house, which is down the street on Grand River as well, near where the old Pizza Hut, pretty sure where the old Pizza Hut used to be. And Klingman's should be opening in what the Toys R Us, previously vacated Toys R Us facility is, as well as the Pine Village development, and the Marathon at Hazlet Road and Marsh is also going to have some new demolition going on in the next couple of weeks.
Could you also talk about one of the bigger projects, the Village of Meridian, how that's going?
So that's the village, that's Hazlet Village, yep. That's Hazlet Village Square. So we got two villages going on here, yeah. The Village of Okemos, which is longstanding, it's a downtown Village of Okemos, those four corners. We're still working on that project. Our very eager desire is to make sure that the buildings are down by the end of the year, and that's in the Village of Okemos. In Hazlet Village, we're going to have a mixed use. It's a Pine Village senior facility. It's going to be at the far end of the 54 acres there at Hazlet Village, and that's going to start demo now. Project probably really won't be in full swing until spring and end in summer.
My apologies, I meant the Village of Alchemist. My apologies. Part of this position has to do with neighborhood development, not just economic development. How are you feeling about the neighborhood development aspect of this job?
So when we were talking about me filling this position, one thing they kept asking me about is the things that I really like to do, and I really like to be around people and do a lot of community building. That's what a lot of my background is. And when we discussed here with about site plans and about new developments, there was always going to be an existing neighborhood that we might be adjacent to or developing very near to, and we want to make sure that our residents understand that there's a rhyme and a reason for some of our developments, that the things that we're doing, why the things that we're doing, why we're picking them there, and why we're establishing our core commercial areas the way that we are. So that was an included element to kind of highlight that, even though it's something that we've already been doing.
I see. How do you feel about your position so far, and if you have heard anything from residents? What have you heard?
Well, I would say that I think everyone is very eager. They're really looking to have a lot of the neighborhoods that make up this great community. Like, they are the reasons why we have such great schools and why we have such great families to contribute to our entire community. And the balance, we're looking for this mixture to create some real balance here with the different housing types and income and sizes and everything. So we really appreciate the opportunity to include neighborhoods into our development process.
Okay. Amber, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Katie?
Although a record number of voters decided to vote absentee for this election, there were many people visiting the polls today. HOMTV's Janelle James asked voters why they insisted on voting today in person despite the surge of voters who favored voting absentee throughout the nation amidst the COVID-19 pandemic.
James here at Edgewood Elementary School, where Precinct 9 voters can cast their votes. We talked to a number of people after they have voted. Here's what they had to say.
I live right down the street. I feel very comfortable and confident that I can vote in person and I'll be safe.
I just wanted to do my part to make sure that I could cast my vote and take a part in our economy and everything that runs our country.
Well, it's very important to vote, and I wanted to make sure that my vote got counted, so I wanted to be here.
I just feel like it's something that everybody should do at least once in their life.
I feel voting is not only a right but also a responsibility of every citizen of the United States, and I have voted in every election since I was 18 years old.
That is just part of what some voters had to say after leaving the polls. Stay tuned to Your Choice 2020 general election coverage for the latest election results. Janelle James, Precinct 9.
Although I voted absentee, I must say I really missed getting my I voted sticker to show off to all my followers on social media. Leading up to our live general election night coverage, we invited candidates from 12 local contested races for candidate interviews. The major races we are covering tonight include the 8th District Congressional race, 69th District Congressional race, 11th District Ingham County Commissioner race, 12th District Ingham County Commissioner race, Hazlet Board of Education, and Okemos Board of Education. There are 19 voting precincts in the county. In the early 90s and 2000s, the demographics of Meridian Township shifted, and so did the voters. There are no Republican candidates on the ballot for local township offices, and here's what that means for Meridian Township as a whole.
The history of Meridian Township is
So the 8th District Congressional Representative?
50s, 60s, and 70s predominantly. There were Democrats elected, but it was definitely considered a Republican stronghold. And somewhere in the 2000s, in the late 90s, it's the demographics. Some demographics shifted, and some people's voting behavior shifted, and it started to be more democratic. And by 2012, it was a fully Democratic board that was elected in Meridian Township. And in 2016, it would continue to be a fully Democratic board. And also, you know, for the Parks Commission as well. The history.
We're gonna head out to the lobby where Ben is waiting with some more information for us.
Can you hear me?
All right, joining me right now is 8th District Congressional Representative Alyssa
If you're talking to
Slotkin.
me, I can't hear you.
Alyssa, thank you so much. Hold on. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Joining me right now is 8th District incumbent Alyssa Slotkin. Alyssa, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Of course, of course.
So, first of all, I just want to ask how the campaign has gone in the midst of the COVID pandemic.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's been completely different. We had to rethink and reimagine the entire campaign and figure out how to get to people and talk to them and hear from them without, you know, hurting their public health. And so we, you know, shifted a ton of our engagement from door knocking to phone calls and texting. We did contactless canvassing. We had events outdoors in gazebos and public spaces, and then started advertising on places, you know, like that we had never really gone before, like gas pumps, video screens, since people were still, you know, going to the gas pump. So everything was different, especially things like Michigan State students. Getting to those students differently was very important. So it's been totally different.
In the past 2 years as a representative, you have been the sponsor of some of those, and you've also signed on to other bills as well, pertaining to prescription drug costs, PFAS, among other things. Could you talk about what you hope, if reelected, what you hope to accomplish in your second term?
Sure. So my big hope is that instead of playing constant defense on the price of healthcare, the price of prescription drugs, clean water, keeping our water clean, that we actually get to play some offense, right? That we actually get to pass legislation that affects people's pocketbooks and their kids. And then instead of a bunch of bills that we've, you know, co-sponsored and passed through the House, we actually take them the next step into the Senate and get them signed into law by the president. So we had a big transparency drug, you know, bill on drug transparency so that we know the prices of our drugs before we leave the doctor's office. That passed a year ago, almost exactly a year ago in the U.S. Congress, in the House, but then it's just been sitting on Senator McConnell's desk. So we need things to actually move. And there's almost, I think, 500 pieces of legislation sitting on his desk. So we need to move that to the next step.
I know that the polls closed in Michigan about an hour ago, but could you just talk about why you believe people should elect you to serve another term in Congress?
Well, sure. I mean, I owe everyone in this district sort of the value proposition of why I hope to earn their vote either for a second time or for a first time. And I hope both what we were able to do, you know, passing 9 provisions into law, introducing another 22 bills, all bipartisan, getting $1 million back for our constituents through our offices in Lansing and in Rochester Hills, and holding 30 public town hall events. But then also the way I've gone about that work, right? The way I work is I'm deeply bipartisan in my bones. I believe in it because we have divided government and you can't get things done without working across the aisle, even if you don't agree on some major things. So I'm a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus, the only truly bipartisan caucus in all of Congress. So I hope both what we've been able to do and how I've gone about doing it earn people's vote.
You know, there's a lot of partisanship right now in Washington. How do you work together with the other side to ensure results?
Sure. I mean, listen, the goal and the responsibility, frankly, of a legislator is to find those areas of common ground with people across the aisle. So if we don't agree on everything, we still often agree on things like getting veterans what they need, A lot of people deeply care from across the aisle about our Great Lakes and keeping our Great Lakes clean. We work on things where we can, like even immigration, for some of our farm workers here in Michigan. And we work on things like making more making more medical supplies and pharmaceuticals in Michigan, right? After COVID, where we got kind of caught with our pants down, where we didn't have enough masks for our nurses, at our hospitals. There's a very bipartisan approach to making more of those supplies in Michigan, in the United States. So it's my job to find those areas, even when we disagree on some other big things.
Okay. All righty, Alyssa Stocking, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Katie?
Thanks, Ben. Just so the viewers know, tonight is moving really quick for us. So we have quite a few more candidate interviews coming up and such. So with that being said, we also asked the 8th District congressional candidates about the pros and cons of the current healthcare system, and if elected, how they would address healthcare.
Well, I mean, of course, that's a big topic, and it's an important topic. I mean, on the pro side, I mean, there are millions of Americans who have health insurance and health coverage, and they're satisfied with that. I mean, about 120 million people get their health insurance through employer-provided insurance. Medicaid covers about 70 million people. Medicare covers another 50 million people. So that's a big part of the American population, and there are other systems that work to protect other people as well. There remain, even after the Affordable Care Act from 10 years ago, roughly 30 million, almost 30 million people who don't have health insurance. And even people who have health insurance, the challenges include the rising cost of prescription drugs and surprise medical billing. And there are absolutely things that the federal government can and should do about that. There were bills before the House that have issues to stop the drug companies from being able to game the system. Proposals that would help to that would stop surprise medical billing and many of these other problems. And these are things that I would be supporting in Congress. And I guess I'd like to raise one other issue that I know is of concern to a number of people, and that is protections for people with pre-existing conditions. And that's why I've said from the beginning of my campaign that any efforts to remove those protections will be opposed by me, and that from whatever means, if those protections should go away, I will be working very hard to make sure that we reinstate and develop programs, policies, laws to protect people who have pre-existing conditions, not just to protect them from having coverage be denied, but also to make sure that any pricing of insurance coverage not be impacted by their pre-existing condition.
Yeah, well, pretty much the entire reason that I decided to run a couple of years ago was because of the issue of healthcare. It is very personal to me, mostly because my mom, when she was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer, she did not have health insurance. She had let it lapse, she paid another bill, and she had struggled with healthcare for most of her adult life because she happened to have a pre-existing condition. She had cancer when she was a young woman, 31 years old. So the rest of her life had a pre-existing condition, and the insurance companies could just gouge her and charge her whatever they wanted because of that pre-existing condition. For me, this is a personal issue. And while my mom passed away in 2011, I see my mom everywhere I go in the district. Every time someone comes up to me at the grocery store, clutching my arm, talking to me about how they can't afford their insurance or their prescription drugs, that was my mom. So for me, it's a huge motivating issue. It's a driving force. In the 20 months that I've been in office, we've been playing largely defense against an unending assault on protections for people with pre-existing conditions. And no matter what the president or now my opponent may say about, wanting to protect people with pre-existing conditions, that is a talking point. Because what's going on in reality is a court case that's coming to the Supreme Court on November 10th that is intended to invalidate those protections for people with pre-existing conditions. And it is a very real threat. Especially given the death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, we could see the evaporation of those protections in the next year. And I'm already starting to get calls, including on a town hall just a few days ago, people saying, well, what do I do? I have insurance because of those protections, and I can barely afford it now. So what's going to happen to me? So it's a deeply motivating issue. And my hope is that when I return to Congress in January of 2021, obviously my hope is we have a different president. And instead of playing defense on constantly having to explain why people with pre-existing conditions deserve care, we get to play offense. And we get to actually legislate and improve the ACA or Obamacare so that it's more affordable, it's more simplified. And we get to sort of enshrine this idea that just because you happen to be born with a pre-existing condition does not mean you can be gouged for the rest of your life.
I think I strongly support the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. I am optimistic that the Supreme Court case that's getting a lot of attention, that they will vote to repeal or that the Affordable Care Act is unconstitutional. I think it's unfortunate that so much of the narrative has been around the pre-existing condition coverage. That's something where that's one small part of the Affordable Care Act. And the bipartisan rhetoric has been that any new bill would include pre-existing condition coverage. And so my approach is that the Affordable Care Act has many problems. That one of the best things in terms of, you asked a question about what are the good things. The United States has massive amounts of highly skilled doctors and highly skilled researchers making incredible advancements in the healthcare system. And I think one of the good things about the Affordable Care Act was that it created a marketplace where people could purchase health insurance from insurance providers and have the government kind of facilitate that process. But the problem is that in that process, the Affordable Care Act prohibited many types of policies that would be more flexible and more customized to meet people's needs. So instead, there's the heavy-handed one-size-fits-all regulations that impose, mandatory, they call it minimum essential coverage, which is it's not minimum. There's an expansive amount of policy of services that are included, whether you want them or not. And so the inability of the market to adapt to consumer needs is the key. That's the fundamental aspect of the Affordable Care Act and why costs are so high. And I think one of the other things that people don't really understand is how the Affordable Care Act subsidies work. So for people who purchase the policies in the marketplace, through the Affordable Care Act marketplace, the subsidy is completely fixated on taxable income as according to your tax returns. And with the recent story about President Trump and his, big write-offs and lowering his income substantially with real estate, as a real estate investor, that this is something where, there are, wealthy landlords who are able to retire early, before they're 65 and on Medicare, and they receive, very, very almost free health insurance, getting $1,000 a month subsidies from the federal government, while middle income people, younger people, pay much more, especially people in higher cost cities where they have very little discretionary income, but the federal government fixates the qualification of subsidy on their income for tax purposes. And so I think it's an atrocious system. I think overall there are some good parts without any doubt, and there was definitely some people who were helped. But I think that like I said, the one-size-fits-all nature of the policy is really troubling and something that I hope we can move on from. And I think that whatever comes next would definitely be better. That the government would be able to learn from the result. And I guess I shouldn't say that. But I do think that there's an opportunity for a more adaptable, more responsive system to replace the Affordable Care Act.
Now we're going to go back to the lobby because Ben has 12th District Ingham County Commissioner candidate Sam Frange.
Thanks, Katie. Joining me right now is Republican running against Mark Postoffer, Sam Frange, for the 12th District County Commissioner. Sam, thank you for joining us tonight. You're muted. Sam, Sam? Thank you for joining us. Sam? Sam, can you hear us? Okay,
I cannot hear you. Can you hear me?
can you hear me? Can you hear me? Sam, can you hear me?
Hey, Joe.
Sam, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, we can hear him.
Okay. So he can hear me, I can hear him.
He muted it.
Ask the questions? Okay. Sam, why do you believe you are running against a Democratic incumbent? Why do you think people should vote for you over your opponent?
Well, it's I have an experience. I have a long life experience in business and employment and finances. So I wanted to use that to benefit the community.
You have been in the area for over 40 years. Could you talk about, I believe it's 40 years, could you talk a little bit about what you've been hearing from residents?
Well, I mean, always there are a lot of changes and a lot of different requests depending. Like at the meantime, obviously the pandemic is the major one, plus the economy and the businesses that are being hurt by the COVID. So this is the major concern right now between those two. To manage and make sure that people are staying safe and that we keep the businesses in business, because I know a lot of businesses are struggling or closing and getting out of business, and this is not good for the community.
So you, like I said, you've been in the area for over 40 years. If elected, what would you do to serve the people who elected you to that position?
Well, obviously, we have to look at all the areas that, as a county commissioner, that allows me to be able to provide any assistance or help to the community in various issues. I mean, there shouldn't be just one situation. I mean, there are a lot of areas that we have to review and look at, and based on that, we'll see how we can help the community.
Also, what has been like, I bet you didn't think you would be campaigning in the middle of a pandemic. Talk about with that shift from campaigning and doing in-person events to doing virtual stuff. Talk about that for a second. What's that been like?
Well, it's tough. It's tough. It's not the same. I mean, I ran through campaigns before. I used to be a trustee in Delhi Township a long time ago, probably like almost 30 years ago. And that was much easier to campaign in person and basically interact with people and see what they want and tell them who you are. Right now, it's very limited because of the pandemic. I mean, you cannot just go and knock on doors, and a lot of people probably are not going to be receptive to that. So it is much tougher to campaign in this environment right now.
Alrighty, Sam, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
Katie?
Yep, thanks.
Thanks, Ben. Leading up to the election, candidates running for 69th District Representative spoke to HOMTV about what they believe the greatest needs of the district are and what ideas they have to meet those needs during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Well, Brandy, education continues to be incredibly important, especially with COVID-19 going on. COVID has exposed the enormous inequities in the very fabric of our society, and we need to use this experience to transform our government into one that serves our people better than today. Children who are disadvantaged economically may fall further behind as a result of online learning. Some children with special needs are not really being very well served by the online learning environment that they may be in, depending on which part of the state they're living in. And really all the inequities that existed before COVID are going to be made even worse unless we use this pandemic as a way to totally transform our society.
For me, you know, our district, the state, the country, we're all the same. We're all dealing with the same issues. We all see everything around us. Unfortunately, I think our greatest need is that of an awakening. It goes back to the greed and selfishness. You know, we have become okay with people in despair. We've become okay with homelessness. In a country that has so much wealth, how can we be okay with these things when our friends and neighbors are struggling? But we're okay. That's not okay. And I think the overall issue that we all need as a society is to wake up and realize, what are we doing to contribute to this continued divide among our people in many different ways. And we need to wake up to that. You know, we need to be, we need to do the research ourselves. We need to stop being content with other people's misery. And so I think that's our greatest issue, is waking up. All of us need to wake up a little bit and see what we're doing to ourselves and our planet. Thank you.
Julie Brixey, the state representative for the 69th House District at Michigan Legislature, held the virtual Brixey Blue Wave fundraiser through Zoom. On October 18th, the Brixey Blue Wave fundraiser was founded in 2018. Since that day, 2,221 individuals have made donations and have raised $337,850. The day after winning her primary election, this is what State Representative Brixey had to say for the purpose of the fundraiser.
We flipped 6 seats, lost 1 seat, and came just 2,803 votes shy of flipping the House in 2018. But in that election cycle, House Democratic candidates received over 53% of the statewide votes, and yet we only hold 47% of the seats. And so this is a really good illustration of the profound impact of gerrymandering. It's a 7% swing in representation. So based on the statewide vote, House Democrats should hold a 3 to 4 seat majority right now, but instead, it's really the opposite. We're 4 seats shy of majority. So despite the Republicans' gerrymandering in 2010, Governor Whitmer won 56 of the 110 House districts in 2018 and came very close to winning about 10 additional districts. So she really helped us pave our path to majority, and we're just following down that road. So, you know, why is it important for us to be here? The House Republicans know that Trump has damaged their gerrymandered maps by pushing the suburban districts all over Michigan to vote Democratic. And many of these key swing seats are districts that we didn't even try to compete in 4 years ago because they were, 60, 65% Republican. And that's how quickly Trump changed politics here in Michigan and, of course, across the country. So we only need 4 more seats to take that majority in the House for the first time since 2008. And one of the best indicators that we have for flipping the House is what was by looking at the primary election turnout in these key swing seats that we're looking at. And the good news is we saw higher Democratic turnout in 59 of the 110 seats, which is a fabulous sign. We flipped 6 seats.
Now let's head to Ben in the lobby. for another candidate interview.
Thanks, Katie. Right now, I am joined by one of the Meridian Township trustees, Courtney Wazinski. Courtney, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Ben. I'm glad to be here.
So, could you first tell me what you are looking forward to in another term?
Sure. I first say that our last 4 years, we've really done a lot of work, and we've started a lot of great work, and we still need some efforts to see some of that through. With COVID, we had a little bit of a delay in some of our projects, but big projects that I want to see through fruition would be our downtown Okemos redevelopment, as well as our downtown Hazlet redevelopment. We are at a delay, however, with our downtown Okemos. We will start to see demolition of the abandoned buildings here in about December. And we've got a $12 million project in Hazlet, downtown Hazlet, and we'll start to see demolition, environmental contamination cleanup this spring. So that's one that I would really like to see throughout the rest of this next term. Roads are another big project that we're working on, and we passed the millage to repair and keep our roads up to good or very good PASER rating for 147 miles of roads. And already this first year, we've repaved or repaired 26 and a half miles. 11 of those were reconstruction. So that's fantastic progress. The other really important thing I want to make sure that we focus on is our environmental sustainability and justice. I sit as a liaison to the Environmental Commission, and they're working really hard. We are currently installing a solar project on the fire department, and we're looking to expand some sustainability plans to maybe implement some green infrastructure into the community as well. So those are some big ones that we're looking at. Also working to continue to improve our diversity, equity, and inclusion within Meridian Township.
I want to get to that in a second, but first I want to talk about this past year just as a trustee and having to be responsible into what goes on in the township. What has the pandemic been like for you and the township personally?
I'm going to give a significant amount of credit to our Chief Hamill and Chief Plaga, as well as our Manager Walsh, because they had a very, very quick and succinct and very intentional response to our COVID plan. So they've done a significant job of making sure everybody stays informed, everybody's safe, all of our first line workers are safe, as well as they've established some funding for some of our local businesses to help stay active. $5,000 grants to I think 30 to 40 different businesses. So it is, I work for the state health department as well, so as a local public health professional, I'm very grateful to live in Meridian Township and the response that we've had.
So I want to swing back around to your diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. I know you and Trustee Jackson are involved in this effort. Could you talk a little bit about the effort, the initiative, and how it's going so far?
Sure. Yes, so Trustee Jackson and I are co-chairing what we've established a diversity, equity, and inclusion task force. Highly supported by Manager Walsh, as well as our HR Director, Titoff. We have, diversity, equity, and inclusion plan requires a lot of upfront work and a lot of intentional planning, and it's really not just a conversation, it's a dialogue, and it's going to take a significant amount of time over years to make sure that we can, improve our diversity within our workforce as well as within our community and making sure everybody feels equitable. So we've already, we joined Ingham County Health Department in declaring racism as a public health crisis here in Meridian Township. We have established a small group for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force, and we're working currently with our directors to survey what's already happening here as well as what we may want to think going forward. So we've worked on things like Ban the Box for applications coming into the township, where we take the question on whether or not you've had a felony off of the application, and we wait for background checks at time of top candidacy.
So just going about this initiative, how have events in the past year, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, just to name a few, how have those helped, have those motivated you more to try and do something with the task force, try to make change? How has that motivated you?
Absolutely. I mean, with these, just racial tragedies that have been happening, I mean, these tragedies have been happening, since as long as we've been in the States. However, just most recently, all of the tragedies, as well as just this increase in open hate around our country, really provoked us to know we need to do something. We need to keep people safe and have people feel welcome and comfortable and safe in our community. So yes, it certainly has helped provoke some of these initiatives.
Okay. Alrighty. Trustee Wazinski, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You too. Katie?
The coronavirus pandemic forced candidates to campaign in ways that have never been done before. To tell us more about the impact COVID had on the campaign trail, let's go over to Erin Cornett.
Thanks, Katie. So we all know 2020 was completely overshadowed by COVID-19. It's a pandemic that we are still facing today. But the campaigns were the one thing that we didn't know what was going to happen when it came to them. Candidates are used to being face-to-face. They're used to shaking hands. They're used to hosting rallies and getting crowds of thousands of people worked up. What were they going to do when everything shut down? Candidates were required to all of a sudden become creative with their campaigning. So they had a lot that they had to start looking through. They started doing virtual campaign stops. We saw tele-rallies. We saw online roundtables. We were even seeing on the federal, with federal elections, we were seeing things like television and movie reunions, just getting people talking about the elections and going out and voting. So candidates really had to dive deep on how they were going to impact their voters right now in this digital world. And they also had to keep people really interested in what they were talking about, because let's face it, Katie, when we're doing, digital stuff and we're sitting in on Zoom classes, we're sitting in on Zoom meetings, we kind of are going to doze off. So they had to really think about what were they going to do? What were they going to say to keep everyone engaged and keep their messages on point? Not only did COVID become this huge obstacle for them, on this digital level, but it was also an obstacle on this personal level, because one of the positive sides to campaigning is to have that one-on-one, right? I mean, it's to have the one-on-one of meeting all of your voters. It's that personal connection that we get. I mean, think about how exciting it would be walking into a room and being able to talk to your candidate, like town halls where you can just ask them a question with a microphone. That wasn't going to be happening. But, on a positive side to that is, by doing all these virtual events, candidates could reach voters like no other. I mean, you could have a fundraising event that normally would be something that's invitation only. It's a lot of people that are kind of high dollar donors. And now they were able to do them virtually where anyone could attend, anyone could watch. And I think that was just something that really has shifted not only the campaigns for 2020, but also going into the future. And I mean, what are the campaigns going to look like moving forward? I think COVID has really changed the way that we're going to be seeing elections. So let's dive into something completely opposite of COVID, right? I thought this was very interesting. I want to talk about this. I know our team's kind of been all over it, but there's something big that has happened with 2020, and that is early voting. There's been a huge impact of this on social, right? I mean, it's been the conversation. Everyone's been talking about it. There was a huge shift going into this. So in 2018, even the 2016 elections, it was always get to the polls. Get to the polls, have your voice be heard, vote. Now we're seeing something change. A lot of conversations were vote early. Start raising your voice now. Don't wait. Complete flip, right? Complete flip of our conversations. All of that early voting was all over social media. I feel like you couldn't turn on a social media platform without seeing it. So when you have websites like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, there were hashtags all over the place, right? We had, Twitter started encouraging early voting using specific hashtags. So you could go on and see hashtags like hashtag I voted early, hashtag vote early, hashtag go vote. All of these were inspirational hashtags to follow to hear the conversations of what people were saying when it came to early voting. Additional to that, and sharing those experiences of early voting, we were seeing masses of people go to the polls. It was all over the place. You were seeing on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, people just dropping off ballots, sharing pictures of them dropping off their ballots at ballot boxes in their own mailboxes. We were also seeing people walking to the polls in parades, in marches, really pushing that. And I think that was probably one of the biggest takeover conversations that we've had for the 2020 election, has been doing early voting, and early voting with all of your friends, early voting with your coworkers, with fellow classmates. So that's been like a huge push that we've seen. It's been such a huge push that one of the impacts of this has been that around 100 million voters have voted early in this election. So whether it's your local, your state, or your federal elections, over 100 million people, well, around 100 million people, I should say, have came out for the 2020 election and voted early, which is insane and has been breaking tons of records already. But I also want to touch on this because I know, Katie, I don't know if you said earlier if you qualified under this, but are you a Gen Zer?
I am that weird gap of, I think I'm technically qualified a Gen Zer, but I definitely am more so millennial, I think.
Yeah, you're like right on the cusp, right?
Yeah.
Well, seriously, this election has been probably the Generation Z's election. You can't talk about early voting unless you're talking about, Generation Z. Because the young voter turnout rate has been breaking records, right? The Washington Post actually reported that while a lot of early voters tend to be seniors, 2020 has shown that the surge of young voters has gone up for this election. I know that we were talking about a lot of young people voting before the show today, and and everyone on our crew going out and participating if they could. So it's definitely a generation to watch in the future because a lot of them are first-time voters. Is this the first time that you voted?
It is not actually. I was just thinking my roommates are actually Gen Z voters. So this is their first election.
Yeah.
So we were actually having a conversation the other day, and they were even talking about, in 2016 when you voted, was there that push for vote as much as has been this year? And the truth is, remember in 2016, I never could have imagined going on my phone, on the Waze app, and it alerting me, oh, go vote, or oh, there's a polling place nearby. Is it yours? You should go vote. So it is a very different election because of social media with Gen Z and for all of us.
Yeah, it definitely is a completely different election. Like I was saying before, the conversation completely shifted, and now we're talking about voting early instead of, getting to the polls. There was still a push of going to the polls, but a lot of the conversation we were hearing throughout the year was more of, going out and casting your ballot as soon as you possibly can. And you're totally right. A lot of young people have been saying that they're constantly seeing messages on social media about voting. And when I was doing some kind of look on research and seeing what young people were saying, there are people saying, before I would hear about voting, maybe occasionally from my parents. Now it's become a regular conversation. It's brought up all the time. Like, why wouldn't I go vote? Why wouldn't I go do that? And, with sites like Instagram, Twitter, even TikTok, has become one of the biggest conversations that they're having on those social platforms. And a lot of influencers have been pushing that. So I think when it comes to this, yeah, we're definitely seeing a lot of the younger voters go out and really make change happen. So it's crazy to think that, especially when, you know, this time about 4 years ago, a lot of people were saying it's those senior voters that are really showing up, and we're seeing a shift.
Yeah, when you think about the debate structure even, it's changed so much because of the coronavirus pandemic. And we look at having 3 in-person debates for presidential candidates in 2016, where now we had 1 in person, a second town hall, which again, I imagine reached so many more people because it wasn't just on TV. You could stream it, and you could stream it on social media, which could reach more audiences. And then we had the 3rd debate, of course, in person, socially distanced. But yeah, it's all just totally a different world, and social media is definitely taking a part of that.
Yeah, it's not only become something that you just kind of use, you just kind of have in your back pocket. It's the digital world has really changed how candidates are going to now be approaching elections in the near future, because it's not just something that you have, it's an essential tool. You know, and I know the word essential has been used a ton this year, but it really has. And because our world is digital now, it really is. It's all digital. So it's probably one of the strongest factors that you can have. It's one of the strongest tools that you can have when it comes to a campaign. And you can see that, you know, it's so funny. We're just kind of like rolling into this because candidates that have that social media presence, you start to see a different kind of turnover opposed to candidates that don't. And I think that's really impactful in local elections. I mean, have you seen like a high presence on any of the local candidates lately?
I mean, the ones that do have social media, absolutely. But Erin, we are actually going to wrap up a little bit. I just want to say too, this is the longest I've been away from my phone and I couldn't even tell you how long. So everything you said, thank you so much for giving us that insight into how the candidates defeated the virus on the campaign trail. Now we're going to head to Sydney, where she's waiting for some more information on the election.
Saying never mind, we're going to go to the MSU Spit Kids.
Actually, we are going to head on over to the MSU Spit Kits. Students usually can't wait to see Spartan Stadium. Now it isn't football that has them coming.
Yeah, I have started the process. I picked up my spit kit, that's what they're calling it. I picked it up last week and then I turned it in.
Right now we've got a few thousand participants, and every day it's increasing. Again, we saw a huge spike in participation levels early this week.
But where does your spit go, and what happens to it?
Around here, we've become the Willy Wonka of spit.
Welcome to the lab.
And a barcode that we're able to associate with the people that are giving the samples.
Scanning, testing, analyzing, and stickering?
The end results of the whole process is going to be our real-time PCR output. When we do see a positive in a pool, though, what we see is kind of this multicolor curve.
And the Spartan Spit Teams network keeps growing. In order to save the fall football season, Brian Jesperson tells me Monday through Friday, all Michigan State football players will be tested by the Spartan Spit team to see if they contracted the coronavirus.
Refining it with the goal of providing this resource if we can to make the winter semester of 2021 safer, better, and more effective.
In East Lansing, students usually can't wait to see Spartan Stadium. Now it isn't football that has them coming. All right, so now we are going to head to Ben Grechko again for another interview.
Thank you. Thanks, Katie. Joining me right now is Phil Deshane, the Meridian Township Treasurer. Phil, thank you for joining us tonight.
Glad to be here.
So is there anything you're looking forward to in your next term?
Well, right off the bat, I am looking forward to us continuing to step through carefully this pandemic. It's a serious situation. All 43,000 of our residents know that. Infection rates here in Ingham County are about 1.7%. That means about 800 residents of our township have been infected. It's a serious pandemic, and we've got to take it seriously. So we've instructed Township Manager Frank Walsh to look at whatever it takes to keep our residents safe, to keep our employees safe. We may have to, if this wave we're going through again gets worse, as it did in the spring, we may end up shutting down Town Hall again, or having more and more of our employees go back to working from home. So surviving the pandemic is what we're all really focused on today. In terms of the Treasurer's Office, we're fortunate in Meridian Township in that well north of 90% of our revenue comes from property tax, residential property tax. And one of the casualties of the pandemic has not been real estate prices. In fact, real estate prices are at an all-time high here in Meridian and statewide and nationwide. So our residential properties, as long as those values continue to hold their value, our property tax revenue will remain there. However, we're going to be looking at a cut in our commercial property tax revenue because the Meridian Mall is in bad shape right now. All malls are in bad shape right now. Many of our small businesses are hurting. Our restaurants are being ravaged by this pandemic, and we've got to be willing to work with them. We don't want to tax them out of business. We want to be as accommodating with them as we can. The board recently passed a small business grant program to give 45 businesses grants to help them through this. We may have to go back through that and look at that again using our Meridian redevelopment fund. So right now, our focus is getting through this pandemic. It's the focus of the national election, and it's the focus of our employees here in Meridian Township.
You mentioned the property taxes are fine for right now. It's really the commercial taxes you're worried about. But do you think over time people, could move out of their houses and that could cause, something to happen in terms of how much property tax you receive?
It could, and that'd be a long-term plan that would take place over 5, 10, 20 years. We're already seeing a lot of developers who are no longer building properties for sale. They want to build rental properties right now. Our village of Okemos will have approximately 400 rental units, not condos, but rental units. Pine Village will be 150 rental units, our new project up there at the old L&L Plaza. The market right now is definitely trending towards rental versus owning. It's what consumers want right now. And so that will have a long-term impact on residential values. However, what we got going for us here in Meridian is we got 4 of the best school districts in the state. We've got Hazlet, we've got Okemos, and East Lansing and Williamston. Those are the 4 school districts that serve the township. And people move here from all over the state because of our great schools. And that will lend itself to our single-family homes retaining their value for many, many years to come.
All right, are there any other updates from the Treasurer's Office that residents should be aware of?
Well, we are committed to fulfilling 2 promises we made to the board over the past 4 years. One is to have our pension fully funded by 2027. Millage was put before the voters in 2017, they approved it. And the other one is to pave all 165 miles of our roads with a road millage that was passed in 2019. So we're going to stay focused on those 2 things, the 2 promises we made at the previous board. The new board will also be focused on commercial redevelopment. Our commercial areas were hurting already. COVID-19 has made the challenge worse, but we're going to get through this.
Just real fast, how is that, you mentioned the road goal, how is that going?
Went great. We got 25 miles done the first year, 10 miles reconstructed, and 15 resurfaced.
Okay, all righty. Commissioner Deshane, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Katie?
During our interview. All right, now we're going to head to Sydney, where she is standing by with Ron Styka via Zoom.
Unmute yourself and go. Thank you, Katie. Today I'm here with Meridian Township Supervisor Ron Styka. Ron, what are your top priorities being Meridian Township Supervisor?
Interesting question to ask on election night. My top priorities are having Meridian Township continue to be a prime community with neighborhoods people want to live in, school districts that people want to send their children to, and locations that businesses want to locate in. I mean, we want to keep it the kind of place that it has been and is desirous to people. I mean, anyway, interesting question on election night.
Yeah. With the recent general election happening tonight, do you have any fear of conflict that may arise after votes come in? If so, how do you plan on keeping Meridian Township safe?
No, I really don't. Meridian Township is a place where people get along. They get along well. And I don't think that there'll be any conflicts that will arise here because of the election. I think also that we tend to speak closer with one mind than most communities do. We have an excellent police force if we ever needed them for this purpose. But at this point, I don't anticipate anything like that.
Okay. How do you think the pandemic affected this election?
Well, it was very obvious. We had a lot of people that decided to vote early through what used to be called absentee ballots or mail-in ballots. I myself, my wife and I, we voted that way. We deposited ours in the wonderful little white box outside the township building a long time ago, back in early October. And I think we had more people voting that way than any other way, and partially because of the pandemic. People didn't want to have to go, even though they could do it safely, more or less, with masks and distance. They wanted to be more comfortable and safe by voting absentee.
What do you have planned for your second term as Meridian Township Supervisor?
A lot of the same, I believe. Meridian Township has a lot of strength in terms of its tax base and its citizenry and our personnel who work at the township, our programs. So our plan is to kind of continue to move things forward. We are one Meridian, one big community, even though there are separate school districts and separate villages within it. And we want to keep it that way. We want to keep moving in the right direction. We have a lot of nice parks, places for people to take their children or themselves to recreate. That's important. We want to keep those going. We want to improve them as we go along. We have a situation in the township where we're trying to maintain some rural character as well in the eastern area. I call it the eastern quarter or third of the township. We want to continue to do that. And we're a very green community. We have adopted a climate sustainability plan about 3 or 4 years ago, and we've been working in the direction of that. We want to have all of our township buildings completely powered by non-carbon producing sources. We've been putting in solar panels. We have some new ones just going in right now over at the marketplace on the green and at the South Fire Station. We originally put some up by the township building itself. We have more. As much as we have now, we're going to be putting in that much more again this coming year. We're going to keep moving in that direction and try to continue to be a green community. We emphasize recycling and other things with our citizens. And we hope our citizens will take up the challenge as well and maybe put solar on their roofs and find ways to improve the environment as much as they can through how they approach their lifestyle and their livings. That's one of the main things. We have a road program going on. We're going to be continuing. The voters are very happily approved about a year ago a bonding program where for within 10 years, we're going to bring all our roads up to very good status and be able to keep them that way within our budget without additional funding. And that's going very well, going gangbusters under our deputy manager, Mr. Perry. And we're going to continue that. We're trying to keep our finances in good order. We have one of the few communities that's on a program that will make our pension funds fully funded within about 8 or 9 years, maybe 10 at the most. And we want to keep going on that track. That's another thing that the voters helped us with by approving a few years ago. We're going to try to just remain the best place around to live.
Thank you. I'm Sydney with HOMTV. Back to you.
Thank you, Sydney. Next, we're going to head to Ben, where he has an update on ballots.
Yes, I do. So we have absentee results so far for the congressional district, for the 8th district congressional race. Alyssa Slotkin right now is leading. Incumbent Alyssa Slotkin is leading her Republican challenger by just over 8,000 votes, and her challenger has just over 3,300. In the Drain Commissioner race, Democrat Patrick Lindemann is leading by over 7,500 votes, and Deshane, the Republican, is leading by over 3,600 votes. For the race in Ingham, in the Ingham County Treasurer race, Democratic Schretzing, hope I said that right, is leading by just over 7,700 votes, and Republican Bruce Little has just under 3,500 votes. For the Ingham County Prosecutor, incumbent Carol Seaman just has over 7,500 votes, and Republican George Platesitz has just under 3,500 votes. In the Ingham County Deeds race, Democrat Derek Quinney has just over 7,300 votes, and Republican Carol Van Dry has just over 3,700 votes. In the Ingham County Clerk's race, Democrat Barb Byram has over 8,100 votes, and Republican Joseph Werner has just over 3,200 votes. And finally, in the Ingham County Sheriff's race, Democrat Scott Wigglesworth has just over 8,600 votes, and Republican Daniel Wells has just under 3,000 votes. Now, it is important to point out that these are just absentee counts. These are not total counts. So this race could change at any moment tonight. Katie?
On the ballot, voters chose who they would like to represent Hazlet schools on the school board. We talked to Hazlet school board candidates and asked them how they think remote learning due to COVID-19 will impact the future of education.
That's probably the $800 million question, is what will schools look like, in the coming year and years ahead? And the answer is, we may not know right now. But I think it's important. I know there are a lot of families experiencing it, not just in the Hazlet School District. My family is. We have a son that's attending virtually right now, and it is different. And my hats go off to all of the teachers that are going through this right now, because it is not easy. I've spoken to many of them. It's very difficult for them. And so we need to ensure that going forward, that we try to ensure our very best, that the teachers feel supported going through this, that they have the resources they need to successfully teach our children. And we need resources to ensure our children are doing well, whether that's mental health resources or programs for children. And again, it's very difficult to say right now what things are going to look like in the future ahead. But I think right now many school districts, including Hazlet, are planning ahead. They're trying to, and I think that's important too. Getting the community's input and plan ahead.
All right, now Sydney's standing by with another interview for all of you at home.
Thanks, Katie. I'm here with Okemos School Board candidate Andrew Phelps. Andrew, recently ranked Okemos #4 in best school districts in Michigan. How will you continue to keep that ranking so high?
Hi, sorry.
Can you hear me?
It's continuing to repeat what you're saying.
Okay, I can repeat the question. So Nietzsche recently ranked Okemos #4 in best school districts in Michigan. How will you continue to keep that ranking so high? Hello?
Hi, sorry, yeah, some technical difficulties there. Yeah, no, it's absolutely important to our parents and our community. The identity of our district really is the high quality of our schools, and that really is a testament to our teachers and administration, and our parents. So, yeah, no, it's very important, and I look forward to keeping that.
What are some of your top priorities if elected?
Yeah, so you kind of hit on it right there, just being able to keep our kids in the best schools possible. That's the reason people really move to Okemos, is to be able to give their kids the best education they can. So really, you know, that should be the top priority, whether we're in person or not. Eventually we will get back there, but even if we're back to a point where we're not in person, we need to make sure we're still providing our kids the best education possible.
Why do you think you're best fit for this position?
Sorry, do you mind repeating it? I didn't hear you there.
Yeah. Why do you think you're best fit for this position?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not a politician. This is the first time I've ever sort of run for any office at all. I'm just, you know, a dad in the district who's always been really involved. It's something I, you know, really enjoy being involved with our kids' schools. So I thought it was just a natural step to kind of step forward into more of a leadership role to be able to represent, especially younger families in the district who have younger kids and, you know, who will be here for a while.
How do you plan on helping students who struggle with remote learning?
Yeah, so that's a big issue, especially for some of our younger learners. I think it's easy to you know look at especially high school kids who are, you know, maybe can do that a lot more easier and more naturally, right? So a lot of the younger elementary kids, it's a lot more difficult. And also with you know, kind of socialization, a big part of school is learning to make friends and play and do those kind of things. So those are going to be a challenge. So I think the district needs to be creative in ways that they might be able to kind of provide those opportunities to our kids safely, obviously, no matter what the situation is, whether we're, like I said, in person or whether we're online.
Okay, thank you for your time. I'm Sydney, HOMTV, back to you.
Thanks, Sydney. Before the election, HOMTV asked Okemos school board candidates what two services they think need the most attention in the district that also provides the biggest benefit for students and parents.
I didn't realize you were coming in, so that's why I was repeating what you were saying. So I apologize.
Keep smiling. Keep smiling.
I think the two services that need the most attention are the counseling services that we can provide as a district and the technological services that we provide. Through the counseling services that the district provides, we can maintain a healthy and positive learning environment for our students, both in the classroom and outside at home. And through the technological services that we are providing, we are both closing the educational gap between our most and least fortunate students, as well as making our education system more efficient overall.
Students, educators, and families can derive significant benefits that improve the educational experience in the short term and in the long term, from attention to ongoing equity work and the challenges associated with COVID. I am just passionately committed to the district's equity work. It is important, it is critical, and it is urgent. Current students and faculty, alumni, community members affirm that the equity work remains a critical area of opportunity that challenges Okemos's delivery of an excellent educational experience. And the second service or opportunity that I see are the policies that support planning and transition to the Michigan Return to Learn Phase 5 and Phase 6. That's a basic priority. with this pandemic. The educational, social, emotional, and mental health impacts of this pandemic are significant factors that impact our educational experience.
Right. So in this current time with this pandemic, our parents and students need a ton of support. And this is a unique environment, something that none of us have ever managed or have to dealt with before. So it's going to provide unique challenges. The district needs to be nimble. We may be providing different types of supports for our families and students that we have in the past. And we need to be looking into the best practices on how we can do that. And those may be different for each student. Some students may need a lot of emotional support, but they're doing really well academically, and the opposite might be true, or both. We just need to, provide those to the fullest extent that we can possible. And by that, I don't just mean providing website links. I mean, actually, hands-on, people-on support, so how we can help our students and families, and parents too, especially for younger kids. I mean, we do that here. Lots of hands-on educating our kids, more than we ever had in the past. So any support that the district can provide for that, I think is going to be really helpful. And the other service that's vitally important for many families is continuing to provide the food services for our kids. So many families depend on that service. And I'm proud that the district has continued to do that. I think that's a great thing. I think the district, though, going forward, and I know they're probably looking at this, figuring out ways to provide that in a more convenient way, whether it's different times, different dates, different locations, maybe, even if we could have just some sort of delivery service, I don't know. But anyway, we can provide, those services to our family in a more convenient way, so as many families as possible can participate is going to be a great thing. And I definitely think that's important.
Services. That's a tricky one because I'm not sure exactly what everybody considers a service. From my perspective, definitely the special education resources and services that are offered to that population. That's really important, making sure that all of the services, I guess is the word that I'll use, they're entitled to by law are actually being offered. But then also all of the extracurriculars, the athletics, the clubs, the opportunities for students to be involved in school outside of academics. And then I would also say the mental health and emotional well-being services, counselors, intervention resources to make sure that we are addressing all of our students as a whole, not just their academic needs.
Live right now, we have Janelle James with Julie Brixey. Janelle?
And you're good. Thanks, Katie. I'm here in Meridian Township with Democratic candidate for 69th District Representative Julie Brixey. Where are you this evening as you wait for results to come in?
I am in Detroit, and I am at the Iridescence restaurant in the Motor City Casino and Hotel. I'm part of the House Democratic Caucus campaign team. I'm the vice chair for the House Dems, and we are having our boiler room of results down here tonight.
How has your campaign been going?
Well, my campaign in Meridian Township and East Lansing have been going great. I am currently the representative for the 69th House District, and I did not have an opponent in my primary. This is a pretty safe Democratic district, and I've been spending most of my time traveling around the state, working to help flip Michigan's House blue.
Are you confident that the House will be blue? Michigan's House will be blue?
We've got the best chance since the Republicans put gerrymandered maps into place in 2010. The Michigan House hasn't been blue since 2008. And, when the Republicans created their gerrymandered map, they really didn't count on Donald Trump getting elected and having the impact on suburban voters all over Michigan and also really all over the nation. So we have a really great opportunity here. The results are just now beginning to come in, but there's been a tremendous amount of change in Oakland County. And we have 3 seats there that we're looking to pick up, as well as a seat down in Kalamazoo and a seat up in Traverse City.
What is the issue that you think is important to voters in your district?
I think that many of the voters in my district, I know, are concerned a lot about a lot of things that are kind of our core democratic values. They're concerned about the lack of investment that's been happening in our educational system at all levels, from K through 12 and higher education. They're concerned about the lack of investment in our local communities. Michigan continues to operate the state on the same general fund dollars that we did 20 years ago. And the impact is really visible in our streets, in our neighborhoods, in the failing infrastructure that we have all over the state, and the decline in our educational quality. You know, Michigan used to be in the top 10 in public education, and now we've really dropped down quite a bit below that. So these are some of the issues that the residents in the 69th district are concerned about, but there's also a lot of concern about other things like gun control. Many people feel that their children are not safe in schools because of gun violence. Guns are allowed in the Capitol building, and hundreds of thousands of people go and visit the Capitol every year for tourism, including sending their children there for field trips, you know, before COVID. And yet you can bring a big, long gun into the Capitol building and be standing there. So, you know, that's another issue in my district that's been at the forefront of people's minds. Of course, now that we have a pandemic going on, really the public health threat that we've all been exposed to is something that weighs heavily on the minds of the people in the 69th district. There's over 200, and there's about 230,000 people that have tragically lost their lives to COVID in our country. And our governor has done a phenomenal job of protecting people, and yet our legislature is actively suing the governor and fighting to wrestle control of this important health and safety issue from her. These are some of the things that I hear from my constituents that are on their mind often.
What are you looking forward to if you get reelected for a second term?
Well, I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to serve in the majority. Right now, because the Republicans control both the House and the Senate, even though we have a Democratic governor, a Democratic Secretary of State, and a Democratic Attorney General, it's very difficult for us to advance a pro-education agenda, a pro-clean water agenda, a pro-infrastructure agenda. It's very difficult for us to advance all of the things that we care about as Democrats because we do not have control of the legislature. So I'm looking forward to serving in the majority and being able to work really hard to tackle some of the tough issues that we're going to be facing. Michigan and the rest of the country are headed for a recession as a result of the pandemic. It's not going away anytime soon, and we need to have leaders that we trust will take care of our people. And that's something that government is supposed to do, be there as a safety net for people, be there when we have terrible times of need. In terms of our agenda, women's reproductive rights are very much a threat right now. And the right for a woman to choose is something that is being threatened by the recent appointments in the Supreme Court. So these are some other issues that are remain at the top of people's minds, and we're hoping for some good results tonight.
Thank you, Julie Brixey. In Meridian Township, Janelle James, HOMTV, back to you.
Interview Janelle. Candidates in the 69th District State Representative race were asked what their thoughts were on police reform.
Well, I stand with the Black Lives Matter movement. I like what I see from local communities that are devoting resources and hiring social workers and forming DEI committees to address systemic racism. And if it's done properly, I think that this will help change the culture over time, and we should see an immediate improvement in services provided to residents. The military surplus equipment has no place in our communities. There are many good officers who are serving our communities, and we need to recognize and remember that. But we also need to look at our total police presence on a per capita basis. For example, Meridian Township has 0.89 officers per 1,000 residents, and there's some communities that are over-policed when you have really more than double that police presence. I think that I would like to see a statewide study conducted to assess the police presence on a per capita basis, and I think that would help us evaluate which communities are over-policed. Part of the problem that we have is that that the funding for our local communities has really not kept up with inflation. And this is straining local communities' budgets and causing a lot of friction. And a lot of times, the definition of what is essential is something that is up for discussion in communities, and important services are cut because of these budget constraints. So properly funding our local communities is something that's extremely important.
Well, police brutality and demonstrations are nothing new in this country, unfortunately. I believe one is right, one is wrong. I believe the right are the demonstrators, and they're being condemned. I believe the wrong are the police being condoned and allowed to conduct business as usual. We see it every day in a new example, regardless of trainings, regardless of the videos that are watching and recording. The police are continuing to do the same thing they've always done. So I'm in favor of defunding the police, and beginning to with that defunding is to put it into, mental health issues, put it into those areas where money is needed. Fight crime before it becomes a crime. But
for the upcoming year, is there anything in particular that you're looking forward to in 2021?
As far as our goals, our goals would be, number one, just to maintain a safe working environment for our employees and for our 42,000 residents who need our services. They rely on us for police and fire and paramedic services and plowing snow and all sorts of things. So our number one priority, keep people safe and take care of our residents. And that may sound like, not a very high target, but for us, it is our number one target going into the next year. We're going to do a big solar project. We're going to do some projects, don't get me wrong, but our number one priority is taking care of our people.
And could you talk a little bit about the goals, like a little more over the goals and the projects going into the next year?
Yeah, so we'll continue our working towards paving and roads. So we'll do another 10 to 15 miles of roads like we did in year 1 of our program. So we'll be looking forward to year 2. We'll be doing a major solar project. The site's yet to be determined, but it'll be about a $300,000 solar project. We'll get our marketplace, which is where our farmers market is at. We'll get that up and running. We opened it last month, but we'll really open it formally in 2021. And we'll also work on 2 big redevelopment areas: the village of Okemos and the village of Hazlitt. The village of Hazlitt and both of them have projects identified. And the village of Hazlitt project, the Pine Village is what it's referred to. They'll start taking buildings down as soon as the calendar turns. So we have some good projects going on, and we'll of course be addressing the pandemic both internally and externally to the organization.
Could you foresee, if anything, we are in a second wave right now, if anything worse happens, like let's say we go into another stay-at-home order or anything like that, could you foresee anything going on with the budget at that point?
Not affecting our budget so much, but it will affect how we operate our workforce. I'm not going to have everyone coming in. If we have a strong second wave, which it looks like we're going to, we're not going to have everyone coming into the building every day. We need to do some remote work safe from home and mix it up so we have some people in our building. But there are some things we just can't do from home. We can't respond to a heart attack. We can't respond to a traffic crash in our pajamas at home. We need to have people here working. So our concern is going to be this pandemic, keeping people safe, and starting a work from home remote program to try to make it work and engineer it so it works for still being able to serve the community, but at the same time keeping people safe.
You mentioned that work from home program. That's building off of what we've been through in the past few months, but what have you learned specifically from the past few months working from home that you could apply to this program?
Well, we haven't had a work from home program. We just basically sent everyone home when it happened, and we didn't really have a good plan in place in the middle of March. Now we've put a plan together where we're going to have, say we have 5 people in one department, 2 are going to be here on one day, 3 are going to be home, and then they're going to change the next day. So it's going to be a hybrid system of some working at home and some working at the office, with the number one priority of keeping everyone safe and still serving our residents. That's the number one goal of 2021 until we have a vaccine, until we get this pandemic turned around. It should be the number one goal for this community, the number one goal in Michigan, and the number one goal in this nation.
And I know you are the township manager, but could you talk a little bit about if you have any knowledge about testing, like COVID testing and things like that? Do you believe, from a health perspective, that we are better prepared for this next wave by any chance?
Yeah, well, I'm not an expert in that area, and I'm not going to pretend or try to be one. And that gets almost into a philosophical, political question. All I know is that what I can do, and I know what I can't do. And what I can't do is protect the global, stop the pandemic, or help Michigan. What I can do is take care of our 100 and do what I can to work with the township board to protect our 167 employees. That's our primary concern. And also our 43,000 residents who come here for service, to make sure that they're protected the best that they can be. And that's why you've seen us do all sorts of things to serve the public so they don't have to come into the building. And we'll continue to do that.
So just overall, anything else residents should expect in the next year?
No, just outstanding customer service, new roads being paved, police and fire services at the best in the state, and no tax hikes. And that's how we're going to play in 2021. We've got a great township board. We've got a new clerk coming on board. I'm really excited about where things are going to go for the next 4 years in this township. We've got good policymakers on the board. We've got a great team, and we'll just continue to be a customer service, to be a model for everyone else in Michigan. Every government should look at how we do it in Meridian.
Okay. Frank Walsh. Frank, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, and thank you for what you do for HOMTV.
You're very welcome. Katie, back to you.
Thanks, Ben. Although there won't be another election for 4 more years, HOMTV's Meridian News Now happens every week, giving interns the opportunity to practice in tracks such as social media production and reporting. This year, obviously, a lot of schools are online. However, here at HOMTV, you have the chance to be in person, socially distanced, of course, and learn the skills you normally would in the classroom. To apply, we have extended the date to November 9th for applications. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Hello folks, my name is Tavis Millerove. I'm the fire inspector at the Meridian Township Fire Department, and we're making this quick PSA this morning to highlight the importance of why you should keep your doors closed on your bedrooms at night. We're here to talk about some stuff you can do, some steps to take to help minimize damage and protect you in your home in case of a fire. We were dispatched to this house this morning just before 9 a.m. for a reported house fire. And when we arrived, they found a very small fire within one of the bedrooms. The reason we're here doing this is to give you an example. If you look around here, you'll see that some of the area out here, and we're in the upstairs landing just at the top of the steps. This area here, we see some smoke sooting on the walls and whatever, but it is relatively in good shape in terms of fire damage. If we take a look and go inside one of these bedrooms that has the door closed, you can see here that this room is virtually untouched. In fact, it doesn't even smell bad in here. So having this door closed kept the products of combustion, the smoke, and obviously fire from reaching this. But in truth be told, the fire never reached out of the room where it originated at, and we're going to show you that next. So here we are at the top of the steps back on that landing, and again you can see the smoke staining and the sooting on the ceilings and walls right around here. And with all the doors being closed here, we had minimal damage in the rooms that were not involved in the fire. But if you look at this door right here to this bedroom, you'll see that there's a little bit of darkening around here where we got some smoke staining and sooting. And the fire originating in this room right here, a lot of people think to themselves, well, how can just a simple piece of wood, this little door, which most of the times is hollow in itself, actually protect me from a fire situation? And the answer is right here. It's surprising how well it does. Just take a look for yourself. So here you can see where all the heat built up in the room. You've got heavy fire damage, smoke damage, charring at the top of the ceiling, at the top of the walls. You even have your smoke alarm, bedroom smoke alarm up here in the corner that is basically disintegrated because of the heat. And the only reason this fire was discovered as early as it was a neighbor was outside at the time that the window broke due to the heat. If that neighbor hadn't been outside at the time, this fire may have gone unchecked for quite a bit longer and caused a considerable amount of extensive damage.
Welcome back. It's been a great night so far. Now we're going to throw it to Ben, where he's standing by with some election results for us. Ben?
Yes, that's right. Thanks, Katie. So I have some updated results from some new races, but also some old ones as well. These races do include a mix of absentee ballots as well as in-person ballots cast today. So starting with the Ingham County Sheriff's race, Democrat Scott Rigglesworth is leading right now with about 23,000 votes, and Republican Daniel Wells is trailing with about 13,300 votes. For the Ingham County Clerk's race, Democrat Bob Byram is leading with just under 22,000 votes, and Republican Joseph Werner is leading with trailing with over 14,000 votes. Also for the Ingham County Treasurer's race, Democrat Eric Schreitzing is leading with just under 21,000 votes, and Republican Bruce Little is trailing with just under 15,000 votes. For the Ingham County Deeds Register's race, Democrat Derek Quinney is leading with just under 20,000 votes, and Republican Carol Vendry is trailing with just over 15,000 votes. For the Drain Commissioner's race, Democrat Patrick Lindemann is leading with just over 20,000 votes, and Republican Brian Buchin is trailing with just over 15,000 votes. For the Ingham County Prosecutor's race, incumbent Carol Seaman is leading with just over 20,000 votes, and Republican George Plastis is leading with just under 15,000 votes. For state representative in the 69th district, Democrat Julie Brinksey is leading with just under 2,000 votes, and Republican Grace Norris is trailing with just under 1,200 votes. However, this is a very early race. In the 8th district, Democrat Alyssa Slotkin continues to lead with just under 22,000 votes, and Republican Paul Jung is trailing with just over 14,000 votes. And Libertarian candidate Joe Hartman is in third place with just under 1,000 votes. Katie, back to you.
Thanks, Ben. Wow, election night is really turning out to be something. So sorry for the technical difficulties, everyone. We're going to take one more break for the evening.
It takes all of us to slow the spread of the coronavirus. So follow guidance from authorities where you live and stay home unless absolutely necessary. Use a delivery service for essential items like food and medicine. If you must make essential trips, stay 6 feet apart from other people. Wear a cloth face covering and wash your hands for at least 20 seconds as often as possible. Visit coronavirus.gov for the latest information.
There was a time in my life where I was extremely homesick. I decided that I needed a pet. When I first saw a turtle, my heart was full. He jumped up and kissed me and jumped right into my arms. I immediately went up to the volunteers at the shelter and said, I want him, he's gotta come home with me. Now I'm anything but lonely. Every day with Turtle is a perfect day and keeps me company when I'm doing schoolwork. I like it when he jumps up on the table too. He is a veggie thief. He's an incredible companion and my best friend. Can't say that I've met anybody that doesn't love him too. When I adopted Turtle, I discovered all the things that make him unique. He's a little bit of a lot of things, but mostly he's all pure love.
Come join the fun at Nancy Moore Dog Park, where your little furry friends can run and play together in the small dog park. And don't forget about the new large dog park, now open at Central Park South. For more information about the park and how to register, please visit meridian.mi.us/dogparks. See you there.
Welcome back, everyone, to Your Choice 2020 general election coverage. Standing by is Ben with some more ballot results. Ben?
Thanks, Katie. Joining me right now is Meridian Township Clerk Brett Dreyfus, also an election officer. Brett, thank you for joining us. I will get to some questions in a second, but first I understand you have some updated absentee numbers, so please.
Yes, so the numbers are extraordinary, and it's really exciting to report these kinds of numbers. We've mailed out or distributed 20,345 absentee ballots. 20,345 absentee ballots went out, and we received back 19,750. So a really excellent, return rate as well on the AB ballots. And the rest of those numbers that we don't have right now are going to be the people who voted at the polls. And I'm predicting the largest turnout that we'll have probably in recorded Meridian history, which could potentially, approach 90% perhaps.
So how has the pandemic altered how you go about doing business as far as elections?
Well, with these unbelievable turnout numbers, apparently a pandemic didn't stop Meridian voters from wanting to exercise their constitutional rights and express their voice. So that's a great thing in terms of nothing's going to stop Meridian voters from wanting to come to cast a ballot. What the pandemic did was affect how we do the logistics of day-to-day voting. During the 40-day voting cycle, anybody that voted that came to our township municipal building had to go to the town hall room. In the past, they used the front counter. Going in the town hall room, we were able to maintain better 6-foot distancing, do easier wipe downs of surfaces, and be able to control and make sure everybody's wearing a mask. Though voters do not have to wear a mask, it's the only exception. We are able to still encourage mask usage, and if someone chose not to wear a mask, we could still accommodate that voter. So that's one of the ways that the pandemic affected. It affected our recruitment. I thought we were going to have very little poll workers. We had a huge number of people willing to step up and saying, I want to help. And they said, because of the pandemic, I want to help. So counterintuitive. We really got people saying, again, it's so important. I'm willing to, I'm willing, even in the midst of what's going on, I'm willing to help serve, our democracy and make it function by serving in that role. So that's some of the ways that we did training, and we had to point out ways to do disinfecting in the precinct and try to keep social distancing in the precinct as well.
So there have been some concerns about people's votes being counted in this election and being counted accurately. I know there's been a lot of concern about that. How can you assure the residents that every vote will be counted and it will be counted accurately?
So there's a number of different aspects to the question that you're asking. There's questions about people question is to make sure, since the vast majority of votes are by absentee ballot, the first questions most people have that have any concerns in these areas are about voter security, making sure that the ballots themselves are are processed properly to start with. So the first things we do is check signatures to ensure the voter identity. And then we have, we use the state of Michigan voter database. We input these ballots, and then they're sequestered, stored, locked away, and they're not looked at until election day. And then they're all brought to an absentee voter counting board by with a Democrat and Republican together through the transport process. Everything's sealed. They're sealed numbers. So everything is accounted for through the whole process. Then all the absentee ballots are open in a room with a number of people, including, again, members of both political parties. And then they're all processed and eventually put through the tabulator. So that's how the votes are cast. They're all put through the tabulator, then they're all counted and put into basically the programming. The tabulator is all checked and tested a month before we have the election, and it's open to the public as well. So we do private testing, we do public testing. The vendor has tested it, and then we know that the software works. So once we know the software works, and we have all the ballots accounted for through the process that we do here at the township, we then can assure everybody that if they cast an absentee ballot and it was received by the township, it will be tabulated and your voice will be heard. The same process happens in a slightly different way at the polling location if you don't vote by AV. The ballots are issued to you in the precinct, and then they're cast right there in a tabulator, and you can tell because the tabulator will make a sound or an indication that the vote's been cast. Those are what generates the actual votes, and those are what we use to determine who the winner of the election is.
I know that you are not going to be serving another term here in Meridian Township. So could you just talk about, just reflect on your time and talk about what's next for you?
Well, thank you. Thanks for asking that question. So I've been involved in Meridian now for, in terms of actual years, 18 years have come along the way. And of course, some concerns and some troubling trends and some things about development and land use issues that have concerned me along the way, all the way to the present as well. So there's been pros and cons like there are in everything in this world. I personally enjoyed my role going from an advisory role in the Planning Commission to eventually having a voice on the board, and eventually as clerk being the chief election administrator as well as being a board member. In my role as an election administrator, I started off with 2,800 people as absentee voters in 2012 when I took office. And over the 8 years, I personally was a champion of absentee voting. Most people have heard me interview, probably got tired of hearing me talking a lot about absentee ballots and the reasons why it's important, why we should encourage, and this was pre-pandemic era, just talking about many of the reasons we all have come to understand why absentee voting is a really great way to eliminate voter suppression and make sure that everybody's voice is heard. And we went from 2,800 when I first took office to 3,200 to about 3,600 to about 5,000, then to 6,000, then to 7,800, and then 11,000, and now we went from 11,000 in August to 20,000 now. So we saw just an enormous increase, about, more than a, just off the top of my head, what was it? It's about a 7-fold increase or something like that in all those years. So that's something I'm really proud of. We did a lot of outreach to get voter registration, connected with a lot of citizens, did a lot of outreach to talk about changes that wound up leading to Proposal 3 in 2018. So many of the things that we've discussed since 2012 became enacted in state law in 2018. Not that I specifically had anything to do with it, but in my role here in the township, I advocated for those things as well, and we live in a progressive community. So the messaging here was very receptive. And Mike, in conclusion, I think some of the important things that I wanted to bring to the table involve transparency in government, and sometimes that's a difficult role. People who want to take on sort of a devil's advocate position at times, making sure that all sides of issues are represented, serving as a sort of an ombudsman, so that when citizens had issues, sometimes they came to me as a last resort. And when I have to raise issues with internally or among fellow board members or staff or administration, it can sometimes have difficulties because we're changing the status quo or addressing people's own agendas. So I'm happy of the fact that we try to work through many conflicts, produce positive change, have a responsive government, and hopefully citizens can be empowered to run for office. We need new blood, and it would be really great to have new people come involved in the boards and commissions, people who are not affiliated with current elected officials, people who are really completely apart from the current political structure in Meridian Township and local areas would be the best people to want to come on board in the next few years and join boards and commissions and run for office in 2024. We need, and different political parties also should be representing, not just one political party from Meridian Township.
Really quick, what is next for you?
Next for me is I came from a background in communications and video, and I've been doing writing, video production, and I'm planning on currently expanding that and probably doing some programming that's both entertaining and interesting, that delves into politics and ways of improving and doing positive transformation for society.
Okay. Clerk Dreyfus, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Real quick, this is just in from the state of This is just in from the state. As far as the Meridian Township jurisdiction goes, the 97% of absentee ballots have been returned. So that is just in from the state, and this is from Meridian Township. That is 97% of all absentee ballots returned on time. Katie?
Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Clerk Dreyfus, for your service in Meridian Township. Clerk-elect Deborah Guthrie will become the new Meridian Township clerk after her primary win. The new Meridian Township Board and Park Commission, all uncontested in the general election and mostly incumbent candidates, will be sworn in on November 20th to begin their 4-year term. With the record number of absentee ballots being counted this election, it is anticipated that results will not be announced until later in the week. These will be the unofficial results until certified. For results updates, please check the Ingham County Clerk's Office website tomorrow and throughout the week. As a friendly reminder, you can watch the replay of tonight's general election coverage on HOMTV, Comcast, Channel 21, Facebook, YouTube, and HOMTV.net. Thank you for watching Your Choice 2020 election coverage on HOMTV. We appreciate you and we appreciate your support for staying with us through the technical difficulties of this event. Thank you to our amazing on-air team and all of our crew members behind the scenes. I'm your host, Katie Schroeder, and it has been a pleasure spending the evening with you. Be sure to stay up to date with all things Meridian Township related by following HOMTV on social media or on our website, HOMTV.net. Have a great night, Meridian Township, and thank you for watching.